Which is more important for Tennessee football in 2022, winning 9 games or finishing with a top 5 recruiting class? What's with Tennessee baseball and their little hand actions and point to the sky and all that when they get on second base? Plenty more where that came from. This is your Mailbag edition. Josh Heupel Wednesday and Ben McKee thoughts by the show. Loaded up on a Wednesday. Locked on Vols.
You are Locked on Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, it's a good Wednesday, everybody, and welcome into it. This is Locked on Vols, your go-to Tennessee Volunteers podcast each and every day. So, appreciate you guys for being here. Got a fun show ahead. We'll do a little mailbag edition here in segment number 1. Thank you guys for getting in your questions at _Caner and at Locked on Vols. Again, Josh Ward and Ben McKee will stop by to finish off this hump day edition of Locked on Vols. Hey, if you're new to the show, welcome to it. Hope you pull up a chair and stick around. I'm Eric Cannon. I do radio in Knoxville, Tennessee at 99.1 The Sports Animal. Also write for the rival site that covers University of Tennessee. That's fallquest.com. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. This is from Bull. And Bull wants to know, it looks like Bryson Sanders isn't getting in the boat. What's the deal with recruiting Chattanooga and North Georgia? Bryson, Jay Hardy, Small Munden, Jamar Gibbs, Tate Rutledge, Trevor Lawrence, etc. Lots of good talent in the area, especially south of the border. Yeah, good question, man. I mean, Tennessee is, recruited that area. It's certainly, especially in Georgia. Georgia's so rich with prospects each and every year, right? I know the previous coaching staffs kind of passed on Trevor Lawrence. I know Tennessee, back when Jeremy Pruitt was here, did like Small Munden a lot, but that didn't work out. Tennessee wanted Jamar Gibbs to play defensive back. I know that when the previous coaching staff was here. Bryson Sanders, I wouldn't say Tennessee's out of it. Now, he might not end up here at Tennessee, but I think Tennessee is in as good a position now than it's been in this entire time, right? He did eliminate one of those schools, eliminated LSU. It's Oklahoma, Tennessee, and gosh, I forgot the other one. I'm sorry, I'm blanking here, but he's eliminated one school, so he's down to 3 right now for Bryson Sanders. So I think Tennessee's in a really good spot. But ultimately, you've got to. Tennessee's done a really nice job recruiting Georgia so far. First year under Josh Heupel did a really, really nice job recruiting Georgia in the 2022 cycle. Now you've got to solidify Tennessee, and a lot of talent does come from Chattanooga. So getting a guy like Bryson Sanders would help with that without a doubt. And I wouldn't say that that's over just yet. I think Tennessee is sitting pretty well right there right now, but ultimately we'll have to see how the next month unravels as Bryson Sanders set to make his commitment announcement on June 23rd, if not before. Al the Baddest, volunteer _27, which is more important, winning 9 games this season or having a top 5 recruiting class? Well, recruiting is half the battle, right? You've got to consistently be a top 10 team if you want to be taken seriously, in my opinion, because even if you're, 9th or 10th in the country, a lot of times that means you're 5th, 6th, 7th in the SEC, right? You've got to finish in the top third of the SEC in terms of recruiting rankings. And if you do that, you're going to finish with a really nice class nationally. So you've got to recruit. And I think Josh Heupel's doing a heck of a job so far. I really, really do. Having said that, at the end of the day, it's about winning on the field. So I think winning 9 games would be more important. Also, I think these go hand in hand. You saw Tennessee finish very, very strong with the class of 2022 in that early signing period. And I think a lot of that had to do with the transformation of Tennessee on the football field, right? They looked like a different team. The offense was exciting. The defense, had a plan, right? And so you saw Tennessee close with Tyree West. You saw Tennessee close with Justin Williams-Thomas. You saw Tennessee close with James Pierce. I think they kind of go hand in hand. So my answer would be winning 9 games, but I do believe if you win 9 games this year, that will only help in recruiting. So good question there. We'll go to Kurtz. Besides football, which national championship would mean more for the university or the fan base? Baseball, especially with this magical season going on right now. Lady ball basketball finally returning to glory, or men's basketball finally breaking the glass ceiling. I think they'd all be huge. I know that's not what you're looking for, but right now in the moment, you would say baseball, right? Because they're on pace to be the most dominant baseball team of all time if they finish the job. And I know that comes with a lot of pressure. But at the end of the day, let's be completely honest here. You guys know how I kind of program this show. If you guys listen to us on the radio, you know how we program the radio show. It's about getting the most, the most ears to listen to your product, right? If we come out and talk football, everyone's going to listen. If we talk men's basketball, a good portion's going to listen. If we talk women's basketball, people will listen, but not as many. We talk baseball, people will listen, but not as many. So without a doubt, it'd be men's basketball breaking through, kind of riddling that woe of Rick Barnes, second round Rick, if you will. They've really, really got to do better in the NCAA tournament. Great coach, Hall of Fame coach, one of the best that's ever done it. Tennessee is in so much better shape with Rick Barnes than they ever will be without him. But you got to have more tournament success without a doubt. So men's basketball would be my answer. But gosh, the Lady Vols and Kelly Harper came back and went to the Final Four, won a national championship. Just what Lady Vol that brand is in college sports and sports in general. I think it'd be huge. Everything it stood for, Pat Summitt, and obviously getting back to the glory days and not living in the past, living in the present, right? I mean, I think it'd be huge for that program. So and long, all of those would be significant. Baseball is very relevant right now. But my answer would be men's basketball because it's what the most people care about, to be completely honest with you. We'll go on down to Bay Rumors. My question is, Eric, do you know the story behind why Tennessee hitters look to the sky and put up their hands over their face while hitting a double or a triple? So I asked about this, and I don't really have an answer, but it was just something that Drew Gilbert started. And, Drew Gilbert's one of the leaders of this team, obviously. So if Drew Gilbert does it, it's going to catch on. Everybody else is going to do it. I mean, if you're a baseball fan, you follow along with baseball, you know that, pretty much each team to do something like that, extra base hits. You guys know I'm a huge Atlanta Braves fan. The last 2 years I've seen them mix it up a couple of times. It used to be the chop. Now it's if you're watching on YouTube, it's the mix it up type situation. This year it's almost like the chop again, but they do it with they do both hands, like kind of like, I don't know what it is, but they do something different every single year. And so that's kind of what Tennessee is. So I don't really know why, but I know Drew Gilbert started it. So it makes a whole lot of sense. We'll continue on here and we'll go to, let's see here if I can get to my direct messages. Let's go to SuxoFred _22. Of the players on this baseball team that are going to be moving on to the draft this summer, in your opinion, who will make their big league debut first? Great question. And keep in mind of the arms next year. Okay, next year you will have Chase Dollander, who will be draft eligible. The following year, you will have Chase Burns and you will have Drew Beam, who were draft eligible. So the arms coming in the next few years. As far as draft eligible right now, Ben Joyce. It's hard not to love a guy that throws 103 miles per hour, right? Consistently over 100 miles per hour. Can they work with him, whichever organization drafts him? And I think we're coming up here in just a minute. Actually, the two-part question, I'll go ahead and hit on that right now. This is also from SuxoFred _22. How do you think an MLB team will treat Ben Joyce as a prospect, back of the end bullpen guy or a flame-throwing starter? I don't know. He can do either. And Tony Vitello said that consistently, saying, hey, he might be a starter one day. We're not gonna do that for him here in college, but if an organization drafts him and sees that he has the stuff to start games, then why not, right? He pitched 4 innings a couple weeks ago. I believe it was in Kentucky. Maybe it was the Auburn series, one of those last series of the regular season, and looked really, really good. His stamina never dropped in terms of throwing, triple digits, right? And so if it's up to me, gosh, I would put him in a starter role because, again, he's not been a closer for Tennessee. He's not been a high leverage guy for Tennessee. And I think he's only had maybe 2-3 appearances in a high leverage, quote unquote, situation. And so he doesn't have much experience in that realm. Of course, you would love a guy to come out of the bullpen in the 8th or 9th inning, throwing 100 miles consistently per hour. I would try to make him a starter, honestly. If that arm can hold up, I would try to make him a starter. So it depends on what the organization wants to do with him. But he is a guy that would potentially make his big league debut first. But Blake Tidball is my answer here. Elusive stuff, really, really good stuff. Can also hit in the high 90s. Got a good arsenal of pitches. Durable, competitiveness. He's my answer. But also look at the position players. I mean, potentially, Tennessee's 1 through 9 in the lineup. 8 of those guys are draft eligible. 8 of those guys could go on and get drafted this summer. So we'll have to see. But Blake Tidwell would be my answer. We will move on and we will conclude with, let's see here, Drew Valentine wants to know, for the Mailbag Pod, who besides the obvious players on the football team do you think is most likely to have a big year? This could include freshmen or anybody else outside of Hooker, Tillman, Small, etc. I have a feeling that we may see some of these younger, less experienced guys step up in a big way, offensively and defensively, even though we're still thin on defense. Okay, so outside of the obvious, who on offense do I think could break out and have a good year? Let's say Jalen Hyatt. Would he be an obvious answer? I know he's a guy we've talked about for so long, but he's not done anything, in terms of being the guy. He would be my answer, probably Jalen Hyatt. If not Jalen Hyatt, I mean, Brew McCoy is going to be a guy, but I would probably say, it's got to be Justin Williams Thomas. Got to be another running back, right? So I would say Justin Williams Thomas, but my answer would be Jalen Hyatt. Defensively, can Tyler Barron finally put it together? Tyler Barron's been a guy that's played an awful lot, but gosh, he's never on the field, right? He's been consistently injured and, kept to 18, 19 snaps per game when there's 60 snaps out there on defense to get. Can he finally break out? He's in a more traditional defensive end type role. That position Jaquan Blakely played last year, not necessarily a Leo. So can Tyler Barron finally break out and be consistent threats off the edge opposite of Byron Young? I'll go with Tyler Barron there, but again, if you want me to go deeper, because again, that's a name that we continue to hear and hear and hear. Christian Charles would be my answer. Whether it's cornerback, whether it's safety, he's going to play, and I think he is super, super talented. So I will go Christian Charles for that answer right there. And that's going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Do want to give this edition of the Mailbag Pod. Do want to give a shout out to Chase. Chase chimes in and said, this is my number one listen as I go to work every single morning. Chase, thank you so much, man. Really, really do appreciate it. And all you guys that make Locked On Vols your first listen, can't thank you enough. There was a question. I think it was my guy, Always the Volin, asked a couple weeks ago about stacking up. And if it wasn't you, I'm sorry, whoever it was a couple weeks ago, comparing collectives around the SEC. If I had to rank them 1 through 14, I said, hold on a minute, let me get some more information. And I've dug around a little bit. I don't have a 1 through 14 in terms of who's the best, but I do have this. And this is kind of what we already thought to begin with. Number 1 would be Texas A&M, simply because of just the resources they have. Number 2 would be Tennessee. 3 and 4 would be either Georgia, Alabama, or Alabama, Georgia. There's a huge gap there, but Georgia and Alabama are coming in a hurry, so they're catching up to the pack. And then it would be Florida. Florida would be behind those two teams. Now, at the bottom of the pack, obviously, you would know it's Vanderbilt, teams like Missouri, teams like Ole Miss, teams like Mississippi State. Those kind of teams would be at the bottom, and then obviously the other ones, the LSU's, the Auburns, South Carolina would be towards the middle of the pack. Those type of teams, Kentucky for basketball, they'd be kind of in the middle of the road. So I don't have a clear-cut answer, and I apologize, but from what I've been told, it's A&M at 1, Tennessee at 2, Georgia and Alabama 3, 4, and they're coming in a hurry. Gap, Florida, and then bottom dwellers is kind of how I would shape it up right now. But of course, still relatively early in name, image, and likeness, and a lot can change even from a year from now. So thank you so much, everybody, for chiming in for this edition of the Mailbag segment of this podcast. We got Josh Ward coming up next for a little Ward Wednesday action. That's coming up next here on the show. But with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain of auto parts store to stock up on all the parts that you need. So why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning while you wait for the person behind the counter to order the parts on their computer, choosing on the brands and specifications that their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers and you have access to rockauto.com at your home and in your pocket. Save time and money with rockauto.com. Why choose to spend up to 30 to 50, sometimes even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership that you can get from rockauto.com? It's a family-owned business serving it to do-it-yourselfers online and the professionals online for up to 20 years. Always reliably low are the prices. You can get them all now at rockauto.com. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car and your truck. Right Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. I want to thank you guys so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every single day. And like we ran into in the early mornings of Tuesday yesterday, hey, if you looked on your audio platform, Spotify, Google Play, wherever, Apple Podcasts might not have been there because our distributing platform, Megaphone, was having some issues. But don't forget, you can always watch it on YouTube. If you can ever find it, look on YouTube. But typically, every single day, you can find it wherever you find your podcast. But making Locked On Vols your first listen and watch. Thank you so much for that. It is Wednesday. That means it's Josh Ward Wednesday. He Took the week off. I don't really condone week offs, but whatever. He wasn't with us last week, but he's back this week and well rested. I would say that you look better, but I'm not. But welcome back.
A week away with 3 small children is not a well-rested week. So
I was gonna say,
that's how I know you're lying.
I was going to say, you always say, hey, I'll be on vacation that week. I'll be on vacation. But when you have young children, especially 3 of them, it's almost like, why bother going on a vacation? Because I feel like it's so stressful and you're absolutely worn out.
Yeah, it's a trip. It's an adventure. It's a journey. But
literally,
vacation is not the word that I would use to describe. But it was a great time. Kids had a blast. Family had a blast.
Making memories. Yeah, making memories. Tennessee made some memories this past weekend, right? A little Rocky Top-a-Palooza. No commitments came out of the day, and we knew that going in. But I think Tennessee did really, really well. And just, people I've spoken to on campus, prospects who were on campus I've spoken with. I mean, Tamarian Parker, really talented defensive lineman, came out of the weekend saying Tennessee's his top school. I think Tennessee did well with Jadavion Bradley. That's a top 30 player in the country, depending on where you look. The Francis Mauioga, I don't know how to say his name, 5-star offensive tackle from IMG Academy, was up here and looked like he had a really, really good visit. I mean, anywhere you look, it was a start-studded affair, and I think Tennessee showed pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. The whole point of the weekend was to show what Tennessee can be about for these players, not to get a commitment on May 30th. That was not the expectation of Tennessee's coaching staff. But in the month of June, as we now enter the month, that'll be something to pay attention to over the next 30 days to see if some news comes out of this past weekend over the next month. But Tennessee has just continued to build momentum, and there was momentum leading up to this past weekend, and Tennessee had spent, I think, the entire month of May saying, hey, let's have a big showing in front of a star-studded group of players, with Nico already being committed and Caleb Herring already being committed, and several others that they're really happy to have on board, and continue to add to the stack. And I would anticipate that's what Tennessee is going to do. But again, from an expectation standpoint, like as you're mentioning, fans probably come out of a big weekend hoping that Sunday afternoon you start to hear of a few commitments. And sometimes that does happen. But I don't think Tennessee anticipated that at all. I think they anticipate good news coming from it in the future.
Yeah, and I can't speak for how other programs do these type of days and everything. I know what Tennessee does because I'm around it, and I talk to these kids, and they tell me, and I see it with my own eyes. But the scavenger hunts, the little putt tournaments, the talent shows, things that I'm not going to lie, you just kind of sit there and roll your eyes about. But I think it's important too because they're not being hounded by football. It's not all football talk. It's just, one prospect this week told me that Rodney Gardner was out there dancing, just having fun. It seems like, this staff in particular isn't overbearing about the football conversations. It's more trying to get to know the kids, and I think that's a nice little strategy, and I think it's worked really, really well for some kids who are committed and are very much in the running right now.
Yeah, let's be honest. The world of college football recruiting is abnormal.
Very.
It is not everyday life, but it's about being creative. It's about being attractive on the field. That still matters, obviously. If Tennessee had gone 5-7 instead of 7-5, it's not as attractive of a place for prospects. But Tennessee did go 7-5, which is better than expected. And they did put up really impressive offensive play, which got a lot of attention. And now they're trying to add to the defensive side of the ball as well. But then it comes back to recruiting relationships. If there's somebody who knows what he's doing in recruiting, it's Rodney Gardner, right, on the defensive line. So, and you're never going to look at any approach and say that's a normal approach as it relates to how we conduct ourselves in daily life. But I think it's a staff that had a ton of questions about what it can do in recruiting, but it did well on the field, better than expected, and it has a good staff of recruiters. Gardner's well known, but others that had to prove themselves. Let's be honest, NIL has helped, obviously, with Tennessee's positioning, but then you still have to bring guys in, and to have that amount of talent on campus together and then be able to create a strong connection while doing that, I think it's almost like a compounding effect. You can create bigger gains in the future because of everything they were able to do this past weekend. This
is not major news whatsoever, but this did happen while you were gone. The start times for Tennessee's first 3 weeks of the season were announced, and of course it'll be, I believe, a 7 o'clock kick. We already knew this against Ball State on Thursday night, September the 1st. Week 2 is not a nooner. It's going to be at Pittsburgh. I just always, when I thought of that Pittsburgh game, I just noon was in my head. It's going to be 3:30 on ABC, and then week 3 is going to be the digital-only broadcast, something the SEC implemented a couple years ago, maybe it was last year, where each team has 1 week where it's, a streaming game. Mm-hmm. Any shockers there in terms of the game times there and the fact that there's not a noon game in one of those games? Because, I mean, I figured there'd be a noon or somewhere in there.
Yeah, I might have hoped for a noon game with Akron.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Media fans hate noon games. You and I love noon games.
Yeah, right.
Because you get in and get out.
Yeah, for that kind of game.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want a big game like Ole Miss last year at noon would have. Maybe it would have been a better idea in hindsight.
I'd take every game at noon.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
I'm not working until 4 a.m.
Yeah, totally. I understand. But the Akron game is just not one I'm going to pretend to be excited about. That's a filler game. Tennessee got out of the Army game to play Akron, and it's going to be at night. And that's one where I would say, yeah, I'd like to get that one kind of out of the way and watch some better games in the evening. But I do like the 3:30 start for the Pitt game. And Thursday night's just a different kind of deal anyway. And selfishly, that works out well for me. So, Akron, you could kick it off at noon, 3:30, 4, 7. I'm not going to be excited for that game. But, it'll still be a game where fans have a chance to go. It'll be easier to get a ticket, and you can see the game under the lights. So that'll be cool.
Yeah. Finally, Tennessee baseball, SEC tournament championship, brought home that title. It seemed to me like everything Tony Vitello wanted to get done, and he kind of mentioned this on the broadcast as well. It's like it didn't go absolutely according to plan, but it was pretty darn close. And you got the arms working, you had timely hitting, and you won games, right? So once they finally got on the field, very beneficial week in Hoover, and earned the number 1 overall seed, first time in program history, and the Knoxville Regionals set to begin on Friday.
Yeah, this team has done everything they could have realistically hoped to do, and in most cases more impressively than anybody could have anticipated.
Is this the best Tennessee team you've ever seen, regardless of sport, that you've seen?
It's definitely right up there.
There's some Lady Vols basketball teams.
The best Lady Vols team, the 98 national championship team. The funny thing about that with the football team is we don't know that it was the best Tennessee football team in that era. It went undefeated and won the national title. So but that's what's required then, right? So we can't say yes with ultimate authority on this baseball team being the best Tennessee team ever until they win the national championship. Because anything else, I'm not going to sit here and say go down the national championship or bust route for that conversation, but to have that title of best ever, the easiest example would be the Patriots in 2007. They were 1 win away from being the greatest football team of all time, but they fell short, and now they don't make the list because they didn't get the title. So that's what it's about. But the arms, the depth of it, the elite, it's not just that they have a bunch of arms, they have a bunch of outstanding arms. To where you can go future first-round pick coming out of the bullpen. It's absurd. Yeah. So that, the power in the lineup, obviously, the amount of runs they're able to put up, they weren't tested, really, in Hoover. And in the best baseball league, to not be tested along the way in the regular season, really, or the postseason, that says something. But that's why Tennessee is a massive favorite to win the national championship. I think people have kind of gotten used to it over the last few weeks, but the odds are not normal for Tennessee compared to the rest of the field to win a national championship in baseball when it's so hard to do.
They've shrunk just minor. Like the rest of the field is catching up a little bit, but I mean, it's still overwhelming.
But look at the regional round for this first weekend. At least the updated odds that I saw, Tennessee was minus 525 in one book to win the regional.
Yeah, which is just insane.
The highest odds for the next favorite would be Virginia Tech at minus 155.
Goodness.
They're in a different world compared to everybody else.
Does it scare you at all that only one, if I'm remembering this correctly, the stat that I saw, only one number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournaments has gone on to win the whole thing, and that was Miami back in 97, 99.
Yeah.
And again, I hate these, dates and history indicators and everything, because this team has nothing to do with any of that. But
of course,
I mean, goodness gracious, you can't ignore it, right?
Yeah, I don't need to sit here and explain to Tennessee fans why they might get scared of something, but I would still say your confidence level should be extremely high. You have an elite coaching staff. You have an elite roster. You are great, both pitching and hitting. It's not like you're looking at one area saying, well, it's kind of a weakness. I mean, you can find some issues where you'd like to be better.
Yeah.
But hitting, pitching, this team has it all. There's a reason that they smoked the SEC. So Tennessee is not guaranteed to win a national championship, not by any means. We saw Tennessee go to Kentucky and lose 2, and it can happen against better competition. Sure, in losing in the regional would be stunning. Yeah. Losing in the super regional would be extremely disappointing, and losing in Omaha is very possible. But everybody agrees Tennessee is the favorite and the clear-cut favorite.
Are you ready to see some fighting camels baseball this weekend?
Yes, I am.
Fighting camels, baby.
Yeah, the camel is my favorite animal. I don't know if you know that about me.
I did not know this. Why? Show your homework.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious.
Did they have those just roaming around Farragut back in the day? I mean, what's going on here?
They're incredible.
I think it's really obvious.
Yeah, so I'd still like to see the Vols advance and continue this run. It'd be great for us on the radio side too. But respect the camels, I will say that.
Respect the camels. Josh Ward back on Josh and Swain weekdays noon to 3 Eastern on the Sports Animal 99.1 FM 990 AM, and of course. You can listen on the app, the website, or worldwide on the app. Josh, what's coming up? I know you've missed a lot of time here lately trying to get back in the swing of things, but today, Thursday, and Friday on the show? Yeah,
everything. Baseball, football, recap of what's going on. I mean, summer months are here, but this is not the slow time of the year. It used to be for us, but action's picking up. So, everything. Little NBA Finals as well with Grant Williams and the Celtics in the finals. So, Swain and I will be breaking that down. Swain's a big basketball guy, so we'll have it all covered on Josh and Swain.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Josh, thanks as always, my man.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to read something. I got a tweet on Wednesday morning, and it's from my guy, Vol for Life and Death. He's always the Volin, and he chimes into Twitter Tuesday all the time. He said, hey, Kaner, pull the trigger. These legit taste like chocolate-covered marshmallows like I'd get on a holiday. I was worried they'd have some weird protein taste. I'm not a fan of dark chocolate by any means, but these are fantastic. Highly recommend, and he's talking about the new Built Bar Puffs, and it looks like to me just the dark chocolate was the flavor that he ordered. So, it's brownie batter. Brownie batter, the one we've been talking about. And do what's my guy always the Vaughn does. Pull that trigger and go to Built.com right now and order some for yourself. The new Built Bar Puffs, they are so fantastic, covered in 100% chocolate. They taste and look like a candy bar, but they've got 17 grams of protein, only about 140 calories compared to a normal candy bar that sits somewhere around 240 calories, 4 net carbs, 5 grams of sugar. It's fantastic for you, and it's the perfect pick-me-up, on a late afternoon, maybe a morning snack, whatever the case may be. If you're going out, hiking, going to the lake, going to the pool. I mean, it's summertime for adventures, right? Put them in your backpack. But go ahead and Built.com and try all the selections. They've got something for you. They've got something for everybody. So go to Built.com right now. Put in Locked On 15 or Locked 15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code Locked 15 for 15% off. It's all at Built.com. All right, boys and girls, one more segment left here of this Wednesday show, and it's been a couple of days. Time to kind of sit back, process everything if you've been following Tennessee baseball all season long, and especially over the long week in Hoover. And a lot's happened since, of course, an SEC tournament title victory. The Knoxville Regional has been announced. Tennessee was awarded the top overall seed in the NCAA tournament, and the field is set to get going for the NCAAs. Beginning this Friday. Ben McKee, VolQuest.com, one of my good buddies, is going to join us here. And Ben, appreciate the time. This is probably hit number 30 that you've done this week, and this is probably the 15th hit that you and I have done. But here we are on Locked On Vols. I've heard you say this before, you've been covering the team since before it could even qualify to make it to Hoover for the SEC tournament, 5, 6, 7 years. And seeing the transformation to today, to where it is entering the NCAA regional with all these championships and the SEC tournament and SEC and all that. How cool is that just to kind of watch this picture up close and personal over the Tony Vitello era?
It's really cool. And quite frankly, I just never thought that we'd see this day ever come. Not saying that I thought Tennessee would stay as bad as it was. The South does love baseball. High school baseball, travel baseball is prominent in the state of Tennessee. So, there's talent throughout the state of Tennessee. And just like football does, the baseball program can dip down into Georgia, the Carolinas, Virginia, Alabama, Mississippi. Tennessee's benefited from all of those states in addition to its own state. So you knew they couldn't stay two down for too long. And Tony Vitello has certainly been the man to get them back on top. But even having the resources to be a better program than what it was, it's still mind-blowing that Tony Vitello and his coaching staff is doing what they are now, just in the conversation for the greatest baseball team of all time. We'll see if the NCAA tournament helps them in that argument, but regular season champs, tournament champs. 5 years ago, you would have been drug tested, quite frankly, if you said Tony Vitello was going to get that done and have them hosting for 2 straight years. And they've made 3 straight tournaments now. Would have been 4 straight if 2020 isn't canceled due to COVID. They should make it back to Omaha for 2 straight years and should win some games a while in Omaha. So I still have to kind of sit back and pinch myself when I think about everything that I'm watching with this Tennessee baseball program.
Yeah, and if it does, finish off the deed, it goes through regionals, go through supers, and survives and comes out on top in Omaha. I mean, you will be having the conversation: is this the greatest baseball team at the college level of all time? A lot of work to do before then, of course, and no one's, as my mother would say, counting your eggs before they hatch. I think that's how it goes. But nonetheless, that's what's in front of you. Let me ask you this, Ben. And for me, I never like comparing current teams to recent history because they have nothing, they correlate, they have nothing to do with one another, right? This is a completely different team, but it is a little worrisome. There's only been one time the NCAA's top overall seed has won the College World Series, and that was back in 1999 with Miami. The only time it's ever happened. When you hear that, when Tennessee fans hear that, little worrisome, right? I mean, what do you make of that?
That the NCAA tournament is hard to win, whether it's basketball, whether it's baseball. I don't think fans take into consideration when they unleash their criticism. I don't think they take into consideration just how hard the NCAA tournament is. There are several great teams every single year that don't make it as far as they should. And it's because all the good teams in the country are in the big dance, 64, 68, whatever it is. I mean, they're all good teams for the most part. They're all in the tournament for a reason. So I think that's what comes to mind when I hear that stat is, man, it is just really, really hard to win the NCAA tournament, to be the only team standing out of 68. Man, that it's just a really tall task that I don't think we as sports fans really acknowledge just how hard it is. So certainly history isn't on Tennessee's side, but also on the flip side of that, there haven't been many number 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament that has had as much talent and as much depth as this Tennessee baseball team is going to have, both on the mound, at the plate, defensively. Athleticism that can lead to some great base running. They certainly have the coaches to guide them there. The coaching staff for Tennessee has a lot of Omaha experience, whether it be as a player or as an assistant coach at other places. So I do think Tennessee checks off all the boxes in terms of the ingredients needed to win a national championship. Now it's just a matter of, can they go out there and play to the level that they're capable of? Because if they do, there's not a team in this field that will beat Tennessee if Tennessee plays the way that it has all year.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say on that note that, I mean, there's never been, at least there's not been too many teams that have been this good as a number 1 overall seed. I mean, Tennessee, any way you want to spin it, it's easily the best team in the country. We've been saying it all season long. The quality in the lineup, the flexibility, the arms, the starters, the bullpen, all that and more. When you look at the SEC tournaments, I know you could talk on days on this, but 3 veterans really stood out to me and are big reasons why Tennessee ran the table down there in Hoover and ultimately took down Florida and won the SEC tournament championship. Evan Russell, who struggled, defensively in terms of throwing base runners out. I mean, again, the phrase you've been coining all season long is he's no Yadier Molina back there, but he's been serviceable and he's been the team's MVP. Going behind the plate, but at times this year it's been a struggle. Base runners have been going against him. He threw out about 3 base runners this week. I thought that was awesome. Jordan Beck, who barreled the bat and has been walking a ton, but just not finding a whole lot of hits here lately, came through in a major way this week, especially against LSU. And then Drew Gilbert, who led the SEC in hitting this year, went through about a 4 or 5 AB stretch where he looked horrendous, but obviously came up big against Florida. I think it just goes to show you, with all the new money that's on this team and, the Christian Moores and the Jared Dickies early in the year, and of course the Trey Lipscombs and the Jarrell Ortegas, new money in terms of getting in this lineup and producing. Those 3 guys who have been doing it stepped up in a major way and are a big reason why Tennessee is the SEC tournament champions.
Yeah, and I also think you have to throw Luke Lipsius in there as well. Luke Lipsius has been just as important. I think Luke and Evan were really the 2 main catalysts that helped Tennessee win the SEC tournament. Luke was so consistent all week. Evan only had a couple of hits, but he had some timely hits, and his defense, he doesn't get enough credit for how successful he's been in this transformation from left fielder to catcher. Yes, teams are running on him. That's also the pitcher's fault. There's just not a huge sense of urgency from Tennessee with the philosophy of slowing down runners on the base paths. Their philosophy is that the runners on the base is the battle, and they want to win the war at the plate. And that has been the thinking several years. It will continue to be the thinking long after Evan Russell is gone. So you're right. Evan's no Yachty back there, but it's not just him that's shouldering the blame for why they've given up so many stolen bases this season. Tennessee's pitchers are slow to the plate, and they'll continue to be slow to the plate. But where Evan does help make up for maybe a lack of throwing guys out is he's stealing pitches, meaning on average 8, 9, 10 times a game, he's catching, receiving a ball that is just off the plate, and he's framing it to where it is a strike. He is stealing strikes, and that is something he has been tremendous at this season. He's done a really great job of blocking pitches, keeping it in front of him. And like you said, I think he's the MVP of this team. Just from what he's done with that transformation is just unheard of. He's developed in the process of moving the catcher. He's developed into a more complete hitter. We all knew he'd come back and hit 13, 14, 15 home runs, but I didn't see him hitting 314 for the regular season. He has really become a complete hitter. And aside from what he does at the plate with the bat in his hands or behind the dish with the glove on his hand, his leadership is the most important thing to this team. You saw him talking to immediately after they were celebrating winning the tournament, saying, hey, like, this is fun, but we've still got a long ways to go. And if we keep at it, we're really going to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. He is a great leader. He's a great dude, and happy for his success because he deserves it. And Luke Lipsky the same way. Knew that he'd come back and hit for power, but he's developed into a complete hitter as well. And I did not talk about Drew Gilbert. You mentioned him. I think that Tennessee will go as Luke Lipsius, Evan Russell, and Drew Gilbert goes, just because Evan and Luke, they're kind of the veterans on the team, the leaders of the team. And then I think Drew Gilbert's just the most naturally talented hitter that Tennessee has.
And then finally, before we get out of here, man, as the week goes on, you and I both will learn more and more and more about these three teams that joined Tennessee for the Knoxville Regional. But Georgia Tech, you got Campbell, the Fighting Camels. You and I are big fans. And then you got Tennessee and Alabama State. Georgia Tech and Campbell, the first game at noon Eastern on Friday. And then Tennessee and Alabama State will get going at 6 o'clock Eastern. That game will be on the SEC Network. Thoughts on Tennessee's draw here, kicking off the true NCAAs on Friday?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good draw.
As it should be, again, with the best team in the country.
Yes, number 1 overall seed for the first time in program history. It should be a pretty nice draw. It's certainly not the Gainesville Regional. Florida is going to have its hands full this weekend. And Tennessee, it's not going to be an easy weekend for Tennessee. There's going to be some challenges. Campbell, they have some very talented players on their team. Georgia Tech can really hit the ball. Tennessee, Georgia Tech, and Campbell are all in the top 10 nationally in terms of home runs. And we do know Lindsey Nelson Stadium is a hitter-friendly park, and it's going to be warm. So I imagine the ball is going to be flying out of Lindsey Nelson quite a bit this weekend. But Tennessee is significantly the better team than all three of those teams, quite frankly. Alabama State, no disrespect to them. Very cool that they won the SWAC. It's just their second NCAA tournament appearance ever, the first under their current head coach. But I would be surprised if they put up much of a fight against Tennessee. They are throwing a pitcher, Breon Pooler, that had a really successful season, and he's from my neck of the woods, Huntsville, Alabama.
Just above the armpit.
Yeah, just above the armpit. Everything south of Huntsville is the armpit of America, or as sometimes I also like to refer to it also as the butt crack of America. But no disrespect to Alabama State, but I'd be surprised if they really gave Tennessee a test on Friday night. But then you get into Campbell, you get into Georgia Tech, and they do have some challenges. I mentioned the power. Campbell has a starter that may be a first-round pick, and I'll be curious to see what Campbell does with him. Will they save him for the do or die game, that game 2 that could get you into the regional final, or the game if you lose to Tech, you're playing for your season. Do they save him for that game, or do they just go ahead and throw him up against Georgia Tech and try to get the regional started on the right foot? But at the end of the day, Tennessee's better than both of those teams. Georgia Tech may hit for a ton of power. They have a catcher that is probably going to be a top 5, top 10 overall pick, but they don't have very much pitching, and you're going to need pitching against this Tennessee lineup, especially when Tennessee is trotting out elite pitching that can handle a Georgia Tech lineup that does have a lot of power. And look, I'm interested to see how Campbell fares, but playing in the Big South, they don't face competition consistently as good as this Tennessee baseball team. So they may look good on paper, but they haven't been doing it against the likes of Tennessee throughout the season. So it won't be an easy weekend. It's the NCAA tournament, but it's a nice draw. I think the Super Regional, if Tennessee does make it to the Super Regional next weekend, I think that's more interesting. They're matched up with the Statesboro Regional, which Georgia Southern is hosting, and that is a tough regional. Georgia Southern, UNC Greensboro, but then Texas Tech and Notre Dame. And Notre Dame was thought to be a team that could potentially host, which tells you what their talent level is. And Notre Dame's a good club. I would think that Notre Dame or Texas Tech would have to come to Knoxville, and one of those two teams would win that Statesboro Regional. But that would be a fascinating Super Regional. I think Texas Tech and Notre Dame would really give Tennessee a run for its money. I would still pick Tennessee to win, but I think Notre Dame especially would really be an interesting series.
You got to earn it, no doubt about it. And this starts on Friday, man. It's already Wednesday, so I feel like this week, because of the holiday, maybe it's flown by. But tons and tons of recruiting coverage, as always, and tons of football stuff up at the website, volquest.com. But you got tons and tons of baseball coverage leading up to Friday, right? What's coming up on the site?
That's right. You're listening to this on a Wednesday morning or just sometime during the day on Wednesday. Put up the 3-2-1, the baseball 3-2-1, 3 observations, 2 predictions, or 1 prediction and 2 questions, I should say, following Tennessee's SEC tournament win and looking ahead to the NCAA tournament, or more specifically, the Knoxville Regional. So a lot of good content in there, and in my opinion, and then also have a scouting report on the other teams in the Knoxville Regional up on the site as well. And we'll have continued coverage all weekend long as Tennessee tries to win its first ever national championship in baseball.
Yep. I'm reluctant to say this, but when it comes to Tennessee baseball, he truly is the best in the biz. So if you're not following him on Twitter yet, now's a great time to do it at Ben McKee 14. Benjamin, thanks, dude.
Thanks, AP Jr.
And you are never coming back on the podcast again. All right. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Good stuff there from Ben McKee, as always. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Gives in-depth looks, the biggest prospects, the latest player rankings, and of course the big boards. Follow Locked On NBA Big Board every single day on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, we chat with Ben McKee. We're here from Josh Ward for Ward Wednesday, and we did a little Twitter Tuesday on a Wednesday. Fun show today. We'll do it again tomorrow on a Wednesday, or I guess on a Thursday if I can count correctly, days of the week. Until then, you guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.